there today, and I'm going to speak, and no one's going to shut me up. So whoever's going to pull me off the stage tonight, she couldn't do it with a mallet, so have some fun tonight when I'm going to get off the stage. But look, I've had it. And look, if I offend anybody tonight, I don't care. I don't. God bless my wife. My wife asks me all the time, see his hippies at home. Homan's a racist. Homan's a white nationalist. Homan's trumps, a gun. And my wife always says, doesn't it bother you that a big part of this country hates you? I said, nope. Because if they knew what I knew, if they saw the tragedies I saw, they'd understand me. They might not like me, but they'd understand my position. There's like the one congressman said I didn't care about dying children unless they're white. Then when he asked me if I had have ever held a dying child, I have. And that one incident, the tractor trailer, 19 dead people at my feet, that changed me forever. And that's why I worked for 6 presidents. I started with Ronald Reagan. Every president I ever worked for took steps to secure the border. Even Clinton and Obama took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. You got to know what's coming in, who's coming in, why he's coming in, and where he's coming in, right? No one did more than President Trump. He's a badass president, and that's just a stone cold fact. He had illegal immigration down 90%, historic. No one's ever had this success. Illegal immigration down 45-year low. Joe Biden is the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the border on purpose. And that pisses me off. I was boarding a plane the other day, man. I told the VIP crowd that I was boarding a plane the other day in Atlanta, and since like Matt, I'm traveling. I've done 8 cities in 10 days. I still got 4 more to do, and anyway, I travel a lot. So the captain recognized me. I get on the plane first because I got a concierge key now because I got so many miles. So I get on the plane and he's waiting for me in the galley. He says, "You're Tom Homan." I said, "Yes, sir." He shook my hand and said, "Thank you for your service. I love President Trump. Hope you guys get back." He goes, "But me and my wife always wonder something. I want to ask you a question, but I hope it doesn't bother you, but why are you always pissed off?" I've seen you testifying from Congress. I've seen you on Fox News. You're always mad. Can I ask why? I said, because I am. I wake up every day pissed off because we had this locked down. President Trump gave us the most secure border in my lifetime. When I started in 1984 as a Border Patrol agent, 3.5 decades I spent doing this. We had the most secure border in the history of this nation, and this guy, Biden, comes in and unsecures the border on purpose. Who the hell does that? What commander-in-chief says, I want more illegal immigration? I want more sex trafficking of women and children. I want more fentanyl to come in to kill Americans. I want more non-suspected terrorists coming into the country. I want the cartels to make billions of dollars more. Who the hell does that? And it's not because of mismanagement. It's not because of incompetence. It is by design. And that pisses me off. They say President Trump, I've been called a racist so many times, it doesn't even bother me anymore, because I'm not, and neither is President Trump. President Trump is the greatest president of my lifetime. He's going to be the greatest president of my lifetime for the second time. They say, well, President Trump's policies are inhumane. Homan, you separated families. 2,500 families were separated under zero tolerance. You know why? Because children were dying on the border every day. Women were getting raped every day. We thought maybe if we enforce the law and start prosecuting people entering the country illegally, because entering the country illegally, which AOC, probably the dumbest person ever got in Congress, didn't understand entering the country illegally is a crime. It's a crime. Title 8 United States Code 1325. If you do it a second time after being deported, it's a felony. Title 8 United States Code 1326. So they say our policy is inhumane. No, they weren't. Because let me tell you something. When Doctors Without Borders did a study, they said 31% of women who make that journey through cartels get sexually assaulted. They get raped. Not once, many times. So let me ask you a question. When President Trump had 90% decrease in illegal immigration, when 90% less people were coming, how many women weren't being raped? How many children didn't drown in a river? How many Americans didn't die of drug overdose and fentanyl poisonings because the border tried the border locked down? How many women and children weren't sex trafficked in the United States? And they want to talk about 2,500 family separations? They can't find 300,000 kids that were smuggled in the United States and released on unvetted sponsors. And I guarantee you, 3.5 decades doing this job, investigating these criminal cartels, what pisses me off is some of these children are in forced labor right now, and some of these children are living with predators. Some of these children are going to be in pornographic movies because you're smuggled in here by traffickers, and they're going to live a life of hell. So they want to say how inhumane we were. President Trump's policies saved lives. Saved lives. Even a border wall. The border wall saves lives. You know why? Because women and children can't get over that wall, which means they're going to go to a place where there's not a wall. And what's waiting for them? The men and women wearing that green uniform, whose first responsibility is taking care of their humanitarian needs, because a lot of people are in bad shape. Let's talk about Joe Biden's policies. Since he's been president, over 2,800 illegal aliens have died crossing the border. Historic record. Over 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Historic record. A 600% increase in sex trafficking of women and children. Historic record. 387 people on terrorist watch lists arrested trying to sneak across the southwest border. Twice as many on the northern border, but no one talks about that. Historic record. Under Trump, 4 years, 11. Them, 387. And that's what we know about. 2.2 million gotaways. What's a gotaway? They're caught on video, drone traffic or sensor traffic crossing the border, but they weren't apprehended because the Border Patrol was too busy making sandwiches, changing diapers, making baby formula, and doing their humanitarian needs. So they just walk in and not get arrested. So if you look at the math, you look at the data, the government's own data, Joe Biden's policies are killing Americans at record numbers, they're killing migrants at record numbers, and put this country in the biggest national security vulnerability in the history of this nation. That's what Joe Biden has done. Along with the help of Kamala Harris and Alejandro Mayorkas, who should have been fired from his job 3.5 years ago. What they did to this country, look, everybody said, why do you think they did that? And I don't, I've asked every Democrat on the Hill when we get in arguments, I always said, okay, let me ask you a question. What's the downside on a secure border? Give me a downside. Less illegal immigration. Is that a downside? No. Less drug flow that kill Americans? No. Less sex trafficking of women and children? No. Less no-inspected terrorists? No. Cartels making billions less? No. What is the downside in a secure border? There is none. But they see a benefit. They did this by design. They obviously see a future political benefit. Think they're going to be, these millions of people are going to be future Democratic voters. But they don't even have to vote. Because when Biden signed 94 executive orders destroying everything we did under Trump, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which means millions of illegal aliens in sanctuary cities would be counted in the next census, which would result in what? More seats in the House for the Dems. They sold this country out for future political power. In my opinion, that's treasonous. Now let's talk about the Senate bill that Kamala Harris this year signed on day one. President Trump, talked to Republicans, shut that thing down because he wanted this to be an election issue. The Senate bill sucked. And I told Republican Senator Langford it was a terrible bill and he shouldn't go forward with it. He called me and 2 chief patrol agents and went through the bill with us. And he wanted our support on me on Fox News, the other guys, Newsmax. I said, you're nuts. This bill sucks. You want 5,000 illegal aliens to cross every day before you take action? That's 1.8 million a year. That's an historic number on its own. This bill did nothing about sex trafficking. It did nothing about child trafficking. Over 500,000 children have been smuggled across the southwest border by criminal cartels. Removed from their families, put in the hands of a criminal cartel to be smuggled in the United States. Again, they can't find, I think, 300,000 of them. That bill, as a matter of fact, the bill had a carve-out. Children don't count. We're not going to limit children coming across. And he thought the bill was good? No. 6 months before the Senate bill, we had H.R. 2. H.R. 2 was a good bill that would have secured the border because it contained much of Trump's policies, like the Remain in Mexico program. Why would we negotiate against known success? We proved those policies work. But it passed the House, but Schumer wouldn't put it on the floor for discussion. He wouldn't put it up for a vote. He kept it on his desk. And they want to say we shut down border legislation that would have secured the border. Then they saw the polls. Immigration is a big issue. So they decided, let's write a bill, like the gentleman said earlier, that they know wouldn't pass. Then they can blame the Republicans for not passing the border bill. That bill, folks, that bill would not have made the border any safer. The numbers would have been historically high. That border didn't fix shit. They just did. Sorry about it. My wife keeps telling me stop saying using that word, but I can't help it. I get mad. I get irritated. I just go. So she's lying when she says this bill would fix the border. And I had conversation with Trump. I told Trump the bill sucked. He secured the border. And let's not forget, she unsecured the border. She's the one that broke it. Right. And she's been there for over 3.5 years. If she wanted to secure the border, she would have. So this isn't about securing the border. This is about protecting our national security. This is about an election. Exactly. And that pisses me off. So let's talk about what's happening on the border. We got over 10,000 encounters, 10 million encounters, 10 million encounters. We got 2.2 million gotaways. We got disease coming across the border. COVID was just one of them. We got TB coming across that border. Chicken, mumps, measles. Migrant centers across the country are being cohorted because of measles and chickenpox and TB. Border Patrol agents, they get skin tested all the time for TB. They run so much TB. TB is a terrible, terrible disease. Disease comes across that border every day. And you see all the sicknesses that we eradicate all of a sudden are starting to rise in the United States. So the border's becoming a national health issue. The border's become a public safety issue because of the criminals they let in. Border Patrol's arrested over 148,000 convicted criminals coming across the border, including 122 that were convicted of homicide. The problem is the 2.2 million known gotaways. And that's what we know about. Now, there's probably as equally unknown gotaways, like the Big Bend sector in Texas. There's no technology on that mountain. 1,000 people can enter every day. We never know. 2.2 million people paid more to get away. You pay the cartels two amounts of money. You pay one just to get to the border. Turn yourself in, the cartel's job's done, right at the border. If you want to get away, you're going to pay a hell of a lot more. If you're a Chinese national, you're looking at about 30,000. Why did 2.2 million people pay more? Why didn't they pay less, get processed, released within 24 hours, get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day, get free medical care, and in 90 days get work authorization, the very reason they came here? That's a hell of a giveaway program. Why would you not pay less and take advantage of that? Why did 2.2 million people, at least 2.2 million people, pay more to get away? I know why. They didn't want to be fingerprinted. They didn't want to be vetted. These are your criminals. These are people that are smuggling fentanyl. These are your sex traffickers. And God help us, these are people who come here to destroy this nation. They come from a country that sponsors terror. They arrested over 387. Terrorists are trained to evade law enforcement, so obviously these 387 were morons. How many 2.2 million came from country-sponsored terror? Let me put it this way. Border Patrol has arrested people from 181 different countries. That's almost every country in the world. 181 since Joe Biden took the White House. Some of these countries are sponsored with terror. I told you they arrested 387 just on the southern border. So how many of the 2.2 million people came from a country-sponsored terror? If you think it's zero, then you're a moron. This scares the hell out of me. And add to this, after 9/11, I was in D.C. We created all these databases, right? The 9/11 terrorists came in on visas, they overstayed the visas, and You know, they came in as student visas and visitors visas. So we created these programs. Let's do the TSA no-fly list. You can't get on an airplane unless you're vetted. The visa security program, which I used to run, WICE works with CBP, and anybody applies for a visa, they're vetted through numerous databases, including DoD intel databases. And we prevented thousands of people from getting a visa coming to the country. We got the FBI screening database. We got the DoD intel database. We got all these databases. We've done a pretty good job for the last 20 years. Pretty good. But in today's world, what terrorist is going to put himself in a position to apply for a visa or a plane ticket knowing he's going to do some sort of vetting when he can simply go to Mexico, pay a little bit extra money, and be a getaway? That's scary. Everything we talk about on the border, that is the scariest thing to me. Even Christopher Wray, who I have zero respect to that guy, even he says there's more red flags right now than ever before, and he agrees with me, this is the biggest national security vulnerability in the history of this nation. Something's coming. Christopher Wray agrees with me that. I don't know how many terrorists have crossed this border. Someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. That's why I'm pissed off. So I've given you about 11 reasons I'm pissed off. I got a few more. They say the border numbers are down. That's bullshit. Let me tell you why. The border number's down slightly. You know why? Because Mexico has stepped up. Why has Mexico stepped up all of a sudden? They didn't want Donald Trump to be president. You know who wants Kamala Harris to be president? Mexico. Because the gravy train continues. Much of the Mexican military, law enforcement, and Mexican government are corrupt. Not everybody, I would never say that. I'm sure there's some men in the Mexican military that joined for the right reasons, or law enforcement, but many of them are corrupt. That's why ICE, we have vetted units we work with in Mexico. We don't tell them everything. We don't trust them. Let's be honest. So Mexico wants Kamala Harris to be president because the gravy train continues, because that's why the cartels are still operating at record profits, because they're balled off the government. Stone cold fact. Might not like it, that's what it is. Who else wants Kamala Harris to be president? The criminal cartels in Mexico. So they're making more money right now than they've ever made in the history of the cartels. They're making record money in smuggling aliens. They're making record money in sex trafficking. They're making record money moving dope across that border, especially fentanyl that's killed 250,000 young Americans. They want her to be president. Terrorist organizations around the world want her to be president. They continue to use the South Porous border as an entry point to come here and try to destroy this nation. Secretary Marshall stands on stage and says, everybody released is vetted. We see how that's working out. Most terrorists in this world aren't in any database. You need to understand that. Unless they're a part of a T3, or unless they're a part of a joint terrorism investigation, or unless they're encountered on a battlefield by DoD and they did a retina scan, we don't know who most of the terrorists in this world even are. So they say they screen. The vetting sucks. I'll admit that. And when they vet them, not only against terrorism database, they vet them against, don't they vet them against, they say they vetted? They vet them against NCIC, our own system, NCIC III state system. Unless they have a prior record in the United States of being arrested, we don't know if they got a criminal history. Do you think El Salvador's, we got access to their criminal data? I don't know if they even have it. Do you think China, 46,000 Chinese nationals that cross this border illegally, do you think China's sharing national intelligence information with us? Hey, that guy's a bad guy, might want to lock him up. We don't have access to other countries' criminal data. So when they say they vet them against NCIC. That's about it. That's why they arrested a guy 2 weeks ago from Venezuela who was wanted in his own country for over 20 murders. He passed vetting. All these people released that are raping young women, Lake and Riley, he was vetted. So when they say they vet these people, they're not, because the vetting is insufficient. That's why you stop, catch, and release, and you detain them, like President Trump did. And not only are they lying to you, not only are they ignoring the law, they're actively violating the law. The law is clear. In the statute, it says if you're illegal, if you enter this country illegally without proper documentation, you shall be detained. Not maybe, not think about it. You shall be detained. They're not doing it. They're not detaining hardly anybody. They'll put somebody in a hotel room with an NGO in New York City at $500 a night, and there's thousands of empty ICE beds the HCI used to run at about $117 a night. In our bed, you got 24/7 medical care, you got dental care, you got attorney's access, $117 a night. In our facility, they'd much rather put them in a hotel room at $500 a night. Why do you think they want to do that? I'll tell you why they want to do that. Because if they're in ICE custody, they get a hearing within 35 days. Most of them will lose. We'll send them home. That's not what they want. Release millions into the United States, bankrupt the system. Some of these people won't have a hearing for 6, 7, if you're in New York City, it might be 9 years. And when they finally get an order of deportation, what happens then? They have 2 or 3 USC kids, they may own a home. Then when I was the ICE director, I even got called from Republican senators saying, why'd you remove that guy? He has 2 USC kids. I said, you didn't have 2 USC kids when he got here illegally. Because he hid out successfully and had 2 USC kids, now he's immune. Now the court order doesn't mean anything? Because if these people demand due process, I have a right to due process, I have a right to claim asylum, I have a right to see a judge. Okay, don't disagree with you if you want to make that claim. But due process doesn't mean squat if the final decision of the court isn't carried out. So if they think they keep her 5, 6, 7 years, they get equities and children, then all of a sudden that court order of deportation doesn't mean anything, then what the hell are we doing? Shut down the immigration court. Take the border patrol off the border because there's no consequences anymore. That's why when President Trump says he wants to run the biggest deportation operation in history of the nation, everybody says, oh my God, what a racist thing to say. What a terrible thing to say. No! When you have historic illegal immigration in the millions, 10 million, and 90% of them, actually 86.7% to be exact, 86.7%, if you go to immigration court data and look, 86.7% of people who claim asylum will get an order of deportation because they simply don't qualify for asylum. Asylum is about escaping fear and persecution from your home government because of race, religion, political affiliation, or participation in a specific social group. Like if you're live in Iran, you're gay, that may be claimed for asylum. But 9 out of 10 will get order removal. So when you hear the news, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, said these are asylum seekers, AOC, they're asylum seekers. Yeah, you can use that term. It's more like asylum fraud because 9 out of 10 don't qualify, but you keep releasing them in the United States. Let me tell you the difference between this administration and Trump administration. I sat in the Oval Office one day explaining this to the president. Don, explain to me this asylum, what's going on? I said, well, they claim asylum to be released in the United States, and 9 out of 10 will get order removal. He goes, okay, well, how many of that 9 out of 10 would leave? I said, 6%, according to DHS's own life cycle report. The president looked at me and says, I won't say what he said. Why the hell are we doing this? That's not with you, sir. That's where the Made in Mexico program came from. If they want to claim asylum, we'll let them claim asylum, but they're going to wait in Mexico to hear them. That way, if they lose, we ain't got to look for them. If they win, congratulations, welcome to the United States. The Remain in Mexico program was a game changer. Because you know what happened after about a month and a half? They stopped coming. They know they don't qualify. The cartels teach them a few key phrases to say, because during the first interview on the border, you claim asylum, your first interview, the threshold is very low for proof. And that was written that way on purpose to make sure we didn't send someone back to the country to be killed. But when you get in front of the judge, if you actually go see a judge, the threshold is much higher. So Trump said, well, let's just keep them in Mexico until we see the judge. That way we don't have all this fraud. It was a game changer. Rename Mexico was a out-of-the-box thinking by President Trump that moved the border numbers to historic lows. That and the Third State Country Agreement. I remember I flew on Air Force One to New York City with the president. We just did an operation called Operation Matador, where ICE arrested just shy of 500 gang members on New York City and Long Island. Most of them MS-13 members. And we went up to the press conference. I remember he got angry with me because when the press came, they asked President Trump, what do you think of these MS-13? And President Trump called them animals. Remember when Nancy Pelosi had a fit about it. You can't call people animals. So he called them animals, and they came to me, Mr. Homan, what do you think? I said, well, I don't know what the president has against animals. But animals kill for survival. MS-13 kills for pleasure. So he wasn't happy. I went up to him. He reminded me on the way home in Air Force One. I went up to him. And, but on the way home, we had a serious discussion. Okay, how quick can you get rid of the MS-13 members? I said, well, that's a problem. El Salvador pushes back on taking it back. We got to get permission from El Salvador. They got to give us travel documents and landing rights. Again, he looks at me in amazement. He goes, how long has this been going on? I said, sir, every presidential administration I worked for. He looked at me and says, not this one. 2 days later, I'm sitting in my office. My cell phone rings. It's president. He goes, how many planes can you fill up now with MS-13 members? I said, 13. He goes, fill them tomorrow because they're going home. He called El Salvador and told me, you're going to take these people back. I'm going to pull every dollar of international aid away from you. Now. El Salvador couldn't move quick enough to take their people back. He did the same thing on third safe country agreement. Because if you really escape the fear and persecution from El Salvador and you get to Mexico, have you not escaped that fear and persecution? You're not in your home country anymore. So you should be claiming asylum in the first free country you come to. Another Trump idea. Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador said, no way we're doing that. Mexico said, no, we're not going to participate. Took about 72 hours from Trump making phone calls to the president and said, you're going to do it. Because the president, he asked me, he said, well, how do we handle this? I said, well, every administration sends millions of dollars down there to create opportunity zones so people have a need to leave and make a living. But it never gets to the people that needs it because these countries are corrupt. He goes, well, I'm not giving them any money. I'll take money away. And that's what he did. And they all came to the table and signed all the agreements. He's one badass president, I'm telling you. Let me tell you what else pissed me off. I wore the uniform. I was proud to wear the Border Chief uniform. I started my law enforcement career as a cop in New York. Then I became a Border Chief agent. Then I climbed the ladder from them. I was actually the first director of ICE who actually came up to the ranks. So the 20,000 men and women that worked for me, I didn't ask them to do anything that I didn't do myself because I was one of them. That was the greatest honor in my life. What pisses me off is that this president, well, let's talk about Kamala Harris. She compared ICE to the KKK. An open hearing. She's threatened to shut down ICE detention, which means we won't be detaining anybody. She called the men of the Horse Patrol racist for supposedly whipping black people. She supports sanctuary cities. She released several people when she's Attorney General in California, illegal aliens. She refused to turn these people over to ICE, and they later were released and murdered U.S. citizens. And she claims she's going to fix the border. She ain't going to fix the border. She's the one that broke it. She don't want to fix it. But what upsets me is her, President Biden, and Ali Homan Mayorkas stood at the White House podium and attacked the men of the Horse Patrol for supposedly whipping black migrants. Let me be clear. When that video came out, I was actually at home. I looked at the video, and I said, all right, good job. Border Patrol agents did exactly as they were trained. The horses performed exactly as they were trained. I know the rules of engagement. I was one of them. I saying, good job. The only ones that did anything wrong that day were the Haitian aliens who came in the country illegally, which is a crime. They ignored verbal commands from a federal law enforcement officer, which is a felony. But no one talked about them being the bad ones. It was about the men wearing the green uniform. And I know these guys. I know their wives were attacked in churches and bullied. I know their children were bullied in schools about their daddy being racist and whipping black people. These GS-12, which isn't a lot of money, GS-12 border patrons went home from work that day with the President of the United States calling them racist. Think about that. They're Border Patrol agents. And they've been called a racist by the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. They're still not back to full duty. They're trying to nail them with one guy used a bad word. Because the investigation came out, they didn't win anybody. They spun the reins to control the horses. They want to run people over. So now they're trying to find some administrative charge to save face because they call them all out. Now they got to find something. One was too aggressive, but the good thing, the union's got some good attorneys. I think they'll beat all of them. And after they're found innocent, I demanded, of course they didn't listen to me because they don't like me, but I demanded the President, Vice President Alejandro Mayorkas ought to stand at the same White House podium and apologize for slandering these men and ruining their careers. But they didn't. The men and women of the Border Patrol is the only humanity on that border. These men and women bring toys from their own kids to these centers so these kids have something to play with. They take sicknesses home to their families every day. I was down the border about 6 months ago. And I was watching this big group get arrested. And the guys know me because they knew I was an agent and they don't know it's ice truck. They call me Iceman, which I appreciate. Anyways, they arrested a group of about 150. And there's a little girl amongst them. Well, 8, 9 years old. She wasn't with anybody. She had an address pinned to her jacket and a phone number of where the smuggler says she needs to be delivered. I can't explain the terror in that little girl's eyes. She didn't know any of these people. Scared to death, crying, couldn't catch her breath. You looked at her and your heart broke. And the Border Patrol agent bigger than me, I watched him get on his knees and talk to that little girl. I'm watching this. He's speaking to her in Spanish. It took a few minutes, and that little girl cracked a smile. And put her arms around him. Kissed him. That Border Patrol agent carried her around the rest of the night. These Border Patrol agents who are attacked by this administration are the only humanity on that border. They're the finest 1% this country has. And they put their lives on the line for this country every day. They put a Kevlar vest on, a gun on their hip every day to try to do the job that they're sworn to do. But you know what? The morale is non-existent. The morale is in the toilet because they can't do the job they want to do. They can't enforce the oath that they took. Because as one Border Patrol agent told me, he feels like an Uber driver. We arrest them, we process them, we drive them to the airport so they get the free airline ticket and go any place they want. The kids, we turn them to HHS. HHS delivers them to the very people that paid to have them smuggled, which is a felony. That pisses me off, because now they can't find over 100,000. I mean, it was 148,000 that they can't find at all, either them or the sponsor, and then there's over 300,000 they can't find. God help these kids. One of the first things that President Trump's going to do is going to find these children and rescue them. I get mad because I wake up every day knowing there's tragedy on the border again, and I've seen enough of it. I remember I was in Dallas, Texas, speaking to the International Chiefs of Police. We were in ICE for like 3 years now. And I get a phone call. They said there's a critical incident. I tell the story a lot because it's important. They said there's a critical incident in Victoria, Texas. You need to get down there right away and run the investigation. The director at the time, John Morton, knew I spent my whole career investigating these cartels: alien smuggling, human trafficking, drug smuggling, gun smuggling, and dope. And he says, get down there, Tom. You're in Texas. Get down there, run the investigation. So I get down there. I take a helicopter ride down to Victoria, and I land at the crime scene with nothing but the clothes on my back. I didn't even get a chance to go to a hotel room and pack a bag. I grew up in a town of 2,500 people. I grew up milking cows. I'm a nobody, right? Proud to be working on a farm. I thought that made me the man I am. But going from a town of 2,500 people, now I'm standing at the back of a tractor trailer looking at 19 dead people. And there's a couple of dead bodies out on the ground because when the doors finally opened, the rush out pushed some dead bodies on the ground. So I remember seeing a couple of dead bodies on the ground. I remember standing at the back of the tractor trailer looking in, and I see all these dead people, mostly all of them in their underwear because they took all the clothes off trying to get some relief from the heat. They're in a steel box, black, no lights, 180 degrees, coroner figured. They baked to death. And when I walked up, I keyed on a 5-year-old little boy. I didn't know he was 5 at the time. I saw this little boy in the center. I remember he was wearing yellow Batman underwear. And what hit me, my son had the same underwear, and I had a 5-year-old son. That's what I was yelling at that guy about. I had a 5-year-old son at the time, and I remember keying on that and seeing the same underwear. So I got a stepladder, got back to that truck, and it took me a while to get my senses back, because that screwed me up. I'm telling you. When the crime scene photographer got there, we used to do things in quadrants. I said, no, we're going to work around the perimeter, then we'll do the middle, and we'll do the child last. If it served, I said, just do it. It didn't make sense to him, it didn't make sense to me, but I could not deal with the child. I couldn't approach him at that time. I'm a big, tough guy, but that broke me. And when I did finally get to the child, I did. Like I told the congressman, I got on my knees, I held him and said a prayer, because I knew what he went through. He begged, from the other witness in the back of the tractor, he begged his father not to let him die. He wanted to see his mom and sisters again. Daddy, don't let me die. He begged over and over again until he lost consciousness. He was the first one to die, and his dad died on top of him. That child shouldn't have suffered that death. No one should. So when I wake up every day and they unsecure the border and told the whole world, you can come here, you get released, we'll fly you to the city of your choice, and we can't deport you. Because why? Because Secretary Mayorkas told ICE agents, and this is on record, being in the country illegally on his own is enough for ICE to go make an arrest. They got to be convicted of a serious crime before ICE can even drop a detainer on them. So, gates are wide open. When you make those type of promises, you can come to the greatest nation on earth, you won't be detained, and even when you lose your case, no one's looking for you because ICE can't arrest you because you're just here illegally. The whole world's going to come. The most vulnerable people are going to sell everything they have to come to the greatest nation on earth, and many are going to die. President Trump had it locked down. Deaths are at a historic low on the border. So I wake up every day now, knowing women are being raped, children are dying. While I'm talking to you right now, women are being raped by criminal cartels before they can cross the border. Against their will, of course. And not once, many times. A child is going to die tonight. A baby will die tonight. Because of what they've done. That's why I'm pissed off. We had this fixed. We had this locked down, and they opened up, and the people are dying every day because of it. Not just aliens, but American citizens from fentanyl that's going across the open border. That's why I'm pissed off. I'm angry that any president, any administration would do what they did. It's treasonous. And I hope to God, when President Trump gets back in office, we hold some people accountable. I'm going to tell you one more story. And look, I apologize. I know I said shit a few times, but this is what it is. I want to tell you a story. You know, I'm meaning to upset you. Yeah, I am. I want you to be pissed too. Or I want you to leave here tonight heartbroken. What's happening on the southwest border, because this isn't the game. I don't care what your opinion is on illegal immigration. I don't. But when you cause a crisis this big, as big as this administration did, millions of people coming across the border, here's what it does. It takes 70%, on average, 70% of agents are pulled off the line, change diapers, make baby formula, make sandwiches, make hospital runs, make airport runs, doing everything but their national security duty. On average, 70%. There's been at least 6 times this past year in certain sectors, whether it was El Paso, Yuma, Rio Grande Valley, I'm forgetting one. Anyways, 4 different sectors took every single agent off the line. There wasn't a single Border Patrol agent for hundreds of miles. You don't think the cartels had to feel that with that? That's why you see these big groups of cartels. Okay, we only got 30% Border Patrol agents left. Let's send a group of 100 people to this area, because no one crosses the border without coordinating with the cartels. If you don't pay their fee, they'll kill you. So they decide who comes across, where they cross. For what they try to do, they drag what's ever left on the border to respond to that humanitarian crisis, which means this whole border is now open. That's when they move the fentanyl. That's when they move the sex trafficking. That's when they move the bad guys, because the Border Patrol is so overwhelmed. So regardless of what your opinion is on illegal immigration, when we cause a crisis this big, that's what causes the fentanyl deaths. That's what causes sex trafficking. That's what causes unsuspected terrorists sneaking in. I'm telling you folks, they've created the biggest national security vulnerability I've ever known in my lifetime. But I'm going to tell you one more story, because it breaks my heart. I hope it breaks yours, and I hope it makes you fired up to do more than you're currently doing. I know everybody, by the very fact you're in this room, you're a patriot. And as Matt said, I know you're doing a lot, but we got to do more. I was down on the border 6 months ago. I was with Sheriff Benny Martinez, who's a Democrat sheriff, and he's pissed because he's only got 6 deputies. And his deputies aren't sheriff's deputies anymore. They're coroners. His deputies spend all day long searching the highland for dead aliens. And I asked him, well, I was with him for 4 hours. We found 2 dead bodies. And I said, how often this happened? He goes, Tom, we have over 100 dead bodies already this year in my small county. He goes, and that's what we know about. Most of them we don't find, because if you get dragged away by animals, eaten by animals, or the ones that drown in the river, some of them are never found. He took me to go see a doctor who owned a ranch nearby. And the doctor had pictures of all these dead aliens he found at his ranch. And he told me the story. He goes, let me tell you a story, Tom. He goes, there was a family of people from Africa, a mother, father, and a little baby girl. She was 22 months old, not quite two years old. Smugglers were moving across the river in a boat. Border Patrol was approaching the boat, in their boat. And of course, the smugglers do what smugglers do. They threw the family in the water. They don't have to swim, because they knew the men and women wearing that green uniform are going to jump in that water with 65 pounds of gear on to try to save those lives. They threw a 2-year-old in the river. Well, of course, the Border Patrol agents, they all jumped in to save this family. They thought they saved them. They got the family to the hospital. The little girl died. 22 months. During the post-mortem, the coroner said the little girl was violated in every opening of her body by a member of the criminal cartel as a demand before he crossed them. These are animals. They don't care about sanctity of life. They only care about the dollar. And when you think of Lake and Ronnie, this little girl, Lake and Ronnie, just don't think Lake and Ronnie was murdered. Think of what Lake and Ronnie went through the last 15 minutes for life. Fighting to survive. Actually trying to call for help on a cell phone until he broke it. Taking every breath out of her body. Think about the way they died. No one should die that way. But this administration opened that border up and is causing all this death, not throughout only our country, but in Panama, during the Darien Gap, through Mexico. When I used to give you a number, a couple thousand dead aliens, that's just our border. Thousands die in Mexico, thousands die in the Darien Gap, and many are dying here. So now you know the secret, why Tom Homan's always pissed off. I'm so pissed off, made President Trump a promise. He comes back, I come back. I'll make one promise to you. When he comes back, Tom Homan, let me tell you a story, real quick story. This is a good one. My wife comes running downstairs, I'm in my home office. She comes down with the Washington Post. She goes, babe, look at the hippies and they're doing it to you again. And I don't give a shit what they say about me, I don't care. They can't cancel you if you don't care. They're never going to shut me up. So I'm actually disappointed tonight because I wasn't protesting. When I see protesters, I enjoy it. Because you get to live in their minds rent-free, that's kind of cool, right? She comes downstairs to the Washington Post. It was hippies, and the Washington Post don't like me. The first line of the article says, Tom Homan deports people and he's really good at it. I said, hippies? I carved it out, it's hanging on my wall in my office to this day. That's why I promised President Trump, when he comes back, Tom Homan is going to run the biggest deportation operation this country has ever